Yes, Spurs fans, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur here. Plenty to chat about. Ange Postecoglou, in a very amazing bit of timing, has spoken with, of course, Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, Roy Keane, and crew on the overlap. We'll be discussing him towards the end of the show. We'll definitely have plenty of time to discuss what he's had to say. A lot of things that I think Spurs fans want to hear, but also in typical Ange fashion. Didn't necessarily really hold a lot back. We'll also be discussing as well the managerial situation. I haven't been able to talk to Philip or Jack about it, so I'm curious to see what their thoughts are on it. We, of course, did an emergency stream yesterday with you guys, had plenty of you guys come on, give your say, and Spurs haven't made any moves by the looks of things. No sign of any interim manager appointments or permanent manager appointments, so still plenty to discuss, plenty to look forward to, and saying to Philip in the back end, in typical Spurs fashion, it's not just a cleanup on aisle 7, it's a cleanup on every aisle, it feels like, of the store at the moment at Spurs. So please, everybody, as you're piling on in here, do smash the like button for us. We would really appreciate it. Get into the comments, please, as well, if you want to ask us anything or if you have anything that you feel like we might be missing. And if you did want to support the channel, you're welcome to do so by becoming a member or via super chat. We would really appreciate it. Just going to welcome some people in briefly, and then we will get this show underway. Plenty to get through here tonight, everybody. So do strap in. Some people are saying he's right about the Spurs not being a big club. How does he think he got the job? Stevie Frazier saying he was right about a lot of things in our club, but took zero accountability for his own failings, as if we had won the league. It wasn't for the club. Shake my head. I kind of thought that was typical Ange fashion, Stevie, in that he is a bit of a hero of his own story kind of guy. He had plenty of things I thought that were absolutely dead on that us Spurs fans were probably happy to hear, but also maybe due to the nature of the questioning, there wasn't really any moments where they asked him, where did it go wrong for you? Or would you have done anything differently? There wasn't any of that type of thing that come out, maybe because he didn't need to because of the frames of the questions, but also, as we know during our time with Ange, he wasn't necessarily a guy that would admit to doing many things wrong or, poorly, let's just say. Beto saying glad he was able to say what we as fans have to understand, that we will never achieve anything like this ever again. Ange is a legend. We have plenty of other people in here. Lots of people already fired up by the Ange interview by the looks of things. Scotty Hynam, good to see you in the house as well. Hopefully everything's good with you, my friend. We have as well Dan Davenport. Good to see you, Dan. Hey, Jack, Phil in the chat. My birthday is on the 16th of Feb. Happy birthday to you, Dan. Hopefully you have a good one. Tartan Spurs coming back from a run. We'll catch up on the stream. Big up, lads. Love that, Tartan. Let me know, what was the distance? Are you training for anything at the minute? I'm going to be running a marathon this year, Tartan. So good to see that we have our Spurs runners out there. Let me know if you run in Spurs gear, because sometimes I get a little bit, let's say hesitant about wearing my Spurs gear on runs on certain days. Wayne Bonner, good to have you in the house. Good evening, folks. Hope you're all well. Ange gets it when he refers to us as Spursy. I didn't like that part, to be honest, Wayne, but I did like some of his other quotes that we'll get stuck into. Fantasy McShane saying they didn't ask him those questions, as his full interview is next week. Yeah, that's what's crazy, is that we're going to get a double blockbuster of Ange Postecoglou. Let's get into it, though, here, everybody. Like I said, we are going to get started off first with just Jack and Philip's feelings about the sacking of course, Thomas Frank. Philip, I'll go to you first on this one. What was your initial feeling? Was it relief, happiness, disappointment? Some felt they felt numb towards the whole thing. How did you feel when you heard he was sacked?
Relief, I think, really. I mean, I think they should have pulled the plug on Thomas Frank earlier, maybe after the West Ham game, maybe even earlier than that. I felt that nothing against Thomas Frank. I think he's probably a lovely guy, but I think we found he's just a little bit out of his depth at a club like Tottenham. When you're reading some of the stuff that's coming out now from what the players thought of him and some of the things he was coming out with, I think the job was just too big for him. I think Championship or lower Premiership is his level. Mind you, that's what we are at the moment. But anyway, so I think good luck to him in the future. But the next appointment we make now, they have got to get this right. There is no room for error in this one. So let's hope they do.
Yeah, for me, it was also relief. But I did hear from some people, Jack, that those that really wanted it to happen, when it did happen, they actually felt numb for some reason. They expected to be overjoyed, cracking open some champagne that he's gone. And a lot of people were saying that actually wasn't a reaction. It was almost numbness. How did you feel when you heard it?
I was nearly celebrating. I was very happy to see him go. I think it was probably after the Arsenal match I was on here saying, I was like, this isn't going to work. I think we're probably going to end up moving on from fairly quickly. I didn't think it would get this bad, especially not this quickly. I kind of thought that if he managed to for that Christmas period well, we'd pick up a little bit in January, but it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And I think some of the stuff that's come out, it's pretty clear to see that Arsenal game was maybe the Chelsea and Arsenal games, they were pretty clear signs of what was to come. The thing about Romero showing up late to training after the Arsenal match, you saw he was him and Van de Ven were brilliant all season up until that Arsenal game, and then we played PSG and Romero had a total meltdown that game, and he's been fairly hit and miss since. So I think something seemed to happen in that period with him. So it was fairly clear to see, even though we were getting decent results before, but we were hardly brilliant. But that was when it really started to unravel. And to be honest, I'm shocked it got as far as it has. I think it's fairly ridiculous that they allowed to go on as long as it did. I think West Ham was like the last point where they should have been like, this fella has to go. And I think some of the reports I've seen come out today that Lange and Vinay didn't want him to go. It was ultimately the owners who were obviously looking at their £3-4 billion asset and said, we're in big trouble here. This asset could be worth a third of what it was if we go and get relegated. And geez, the debt that we have, that could end up going to zero eventually. Like they were the guys that were like, oh well, we're in serious trouble if this goes bad. So they had to pull the plug. And I think that ultimately Vinay and Lange not being willing to pull the plug, I think the two of them need to be out the door fairly swiftly as well. But for now, the main concern is just staying up, getting the right managerial appointment in. I think, I don't even know where they're going to turn with the interim. I think it's probably, they might have left it too late to get a good interim. You've seen how Carrick's done at United. He was probably the best option out there that was willing to do that sort of short-term job. So I think, it might be too little too late on the front of recovering the season, but I still think we should be able to stay up relatively comfortably just with the quality of player we have. And I think just a new voice in there will rally the team behind them a bit. So fingers crossed it gets better. But if it gets any worse, we're in a fair bit of trouble. But overall, I was fairly happy to see him go. I was getting sick of looking at him. But I think now attentions have to turn to those that hired him and didn't fire him for the last 4 months. And ultimately, they're the bigger problem. Thomas Frank is just the latest in a line of managers that have been victims, but also being part of the problem at the same time.
Yeah, for me, it was a sense of relief just because I did feel like if we had stuck with Frank, we were going to go down. Whereas now it felt like we needed to make a roll of the dice. And I agree with Paolo Moratti, though, that probably there was also maybe a slight bit of anger as well, because it felt like, it should have been done months ago. I was already kind of really questioning Thomas Frank around November period. December already was pretty much kind of on the Frank out train. And then January, I was just incensed by the idea that they hadn't already sacked him. So it did feel like it's been far too late. And we have a lot of games left, of course, but the fact that we're this close to relegation, the fact that Michael Carrick, whatever it was, wasn't he only 5 or 4 points clear of us when he first took charge of Man United? Now he's in the top 4. It's just insanity that it's taken them this long. And we'll discuss as well, it might not even been the decision of Johan Lange or Vinay. They might have been overruled in that decision to keep him at the club, which is just insane. Incompetence at the highest. I agree with you there, Paolo. Back to you on this one, Philip, though. Let's just do a bit of history revision or history writing here. Why didn't it work out for Frank? Was it the injuries, not right fit for the players, maybe in particular, just tactically not a good manager, personality wasn't the right one? Why did it go wrong for him?
I think it was a mixed grill of about 7 different aspects, to be honest with you. I think one of all, if you can believe what's coming out from the players now, I think his obsession with telling people how good Arsenal were did not go down very well with the players. Get bigging up Arsenal when that's something you don't do as a Tottenham manager. I think his training methods appear to have not been good enough. And I heard a rumor, whether it's true or not, that after the Man United game, the players were extremely annoyed because they were told United would play a completely different game. He misread the tactics completely. And, I think it's just a case of he came from a club at Brentford where he was very comfortable and suited him. But he came to a club at Tottenham where the expectations, let's face it, are so much higher. Our fan base really wants success. And I just don't think, at the time when he was brought in, I thought, this guy could be good. But unfortunately, the job got the better of him. He didn't perform, apart from the first few games. I think we got 13 points out of the first 15, wasn't it? It was a good, very good start. But when you take that away from what we've got since, 16 points from the remaining games, that is, it's awful. Like, I remember the year we got relegated in 1977, and this team, this performance is far worse than what we've done then. We had players in the team at that stage. Okay, it was an aging team. It was a team that was coming off the successes of the early 70s and wasn't really backed. Plus the fact we had the sabotage of Terry Neal coming in, who went back to Highbury in 1976 saying, Agent Neal reporting for duty, mission accomplished. We were relegated the following season. And that would have happened this season if Thomas Frank was left in charge. Now, I don't think there's a chance we won't go down, because the new manager will come in, the players' chins will get off the ground, because that's where they've been for the last while. And the new manager bounce will apply to Tottenham, providing they get it right. And that's my big worry.
Yep.
We need to know what's going on, need to know soon.
You're right on all of that, Philip. Mixed grill, Jack, in Philip's words, for why it went wrong for Frank.
Yeah, can't disagree with anything. I can't provide the history lesson of past issues we have like Philip, so I'm just going to stick to the present. And I think just tactically, I think for a fella who looked so good tactically at Brentford and was able to come up with plans to beat the likes of Man City I think they did the double over Man City, which how many people have done the double over Pep Guardiola? That was one of the main selling points. I kind of saw his team evolve at Brentford and go from sort of, maybe, I think I described Brentford as an anti-football team a couple of years ago, and I was talking to one of the lads, and then I was talking to him before we got Frank, and I said I'd love him just because I thought he had developed his style to be more sort of attractive and front-footed, and I think it could scale up to us, but I was totally wrong on that. And I think just even just reading some of the stuff that like opposition teams were so shocked how predictable we were. Like, I think everyone knows exactly what we're trying to do. You pass the ball around the back, wait for the opposition to press you, you clip a ball down the line or up to the centre forward. Our centre forward was Richarlison, who has very questionable hold of play, so going along to him was just a bizarre tactic. And then once you get up the pitch and you're fighting for those second balls and winning drills and stuff, which is obviously an important part of the game, but when your whole game plan is relying on that, like, it's not Sunday League. I just think that it's such a strange game model to have, that's where you're aiming to win games, because so many games a bounce of ball is just going to cost you then, because you're not trying to do a lot of the time that's not controlled play that you see a lot of top teams have. So, and once you get up the pitch, then it's just, can we hit crosses from anywhere and just basically knock it back to Paro and let them just lump the ball into the box and hope for the best. And I think we must have seen about 1,000 headers come out from the opposition, just clearing poor crosses away from that were hit in from poor positions, rather than working to try and hit the ball into the box from an advantageous position, which is, for all Ange's flaws, we saw how well we could work the ball to get it to the byline and get a low cross in that either would be turned in by a defender or by someone like Brendan Johnson at the back post. But those crosses weren't luck. They weren't crosses from 30 yards away from the goal. They were crosses within 10, 15 yards, usually within the box, that were hit to an actual target at the back post. So that's just the difference. It was more hit and hope under Frank with the crosses. Then just his constant just refusal to take any sort of risks in possession ultimately ended up to us actually conceding some quite comical goals. I think it was against Chelsea, was it? The Van de Ven lost the ball twice within about 2 seconds and conceded from, because we were so lackadaisical at the back playing it out. Like, if you don't have any intention, that's just going to happen. And then obviously his personality, that's fairly well publicized, that he like talking about Arsenal, one of his first press conferences, he says we'll 100% lose games, which obviously is a statement of fact, but it's not really a good footing to start on. I think that's something you maybe say when you've gone on a bad run of form after a good start. You maybe say, oh, well, we're always going to lose games, but to start off before you've even had a competitive game and say that's fairly concerning. But then just the obsession with the opposition, just, how can we stop the opposition? Like, we have won in my opinion, we still have one of the top 8 squads in the league. You have the other big 6 teams, Villa and Newcastle. I don't think any other team has a squad on our level or even that close to it, to be honest. I think that's like, regardless of the injuries, which ultimately only got bad in January, and we were fairly rubbish for about 2 months before that. Lost to Forest 3-0 with a fairly fully fit squad. That's like, I don't really buy that as an excuse for him failing. I was only in recent weeks, but and then I think I saw yesterday when we beat Everton 3-0, I think we were 3rd in the Premier League, and I don't know if that was October or November, but we've only picked up something like 12 points since then. Like, that's just remarkable how it's gotten that bad. Like 12 points in 4 or 5 months. That's just, I don't know how he's lasted as long as he has. The writing's been on the wall for a long time, but yeah, to be honest, nearly every single thing he did, apart from fixing the set pieces, is probably the reason he got sacked. I just think he was such an awful fit and should have been recognised a lot earlier than what it was.
I think the frustrating bit about Frank, too, is kind of building off of what Iceman has said here, is that Frank had a plan A-ish, but no plan B or C, and it took the players to say F this and do what they want to. Because when he first was being lined up for the job, he even was praised by a lot of Spurs fans online before we even hired him and before we even sacked Ange. A lot of people used Frank as this guy that had more of a balanced approach. He could tactically, switch between different systems. He was very flexible. Didn't see that at all, it felt like, at Spurs. It kind of felt like quite quickly we started sort of playing the same way. Against any decent, good team, we would just sit back, hope and pray to maybe nick a draw or get a goal from a set piece or something like that. Like you said, just hoof it long to a Richarlison or a Dominic Solanke and just pray and hope that that worked, and sit off teams and just hope that they didn't end up breaking us down. Felt like Thomas Frank, all the things that he was praised for getting the most out of players as well. Like, it didn't seem like he really improved pretty much any player at the club, to be perfectly honest. And all the things that he was hyped up to be never at all manifested, never at all came true. I wonder if that's just down to the fact that he was at a club like Brentford, which know how to sort of run themselves. They didn't necessarily maybe need Thomas Frank anymore. You could see how well they're doing without him with Keith Andrews, and wonder if he was just a guy that just wasn't maybe made to come to a big club like Spurs, where you're also having to manage big personalities, like you say there. Didn't really seem to warm to the players very much. He name dropped Arsenal too many times in team meetings and even in press conferences also as well. Apparently, some of the players and the staff were passing around some of those photos of him holding the Arsenal Cup, some of the memes of him like in Arsenal pajamas and things like that. Just seemed like he didn't even demand any respect really from a lot of people in the club or even on the pitch as well. It's almost like he kind of got literally everything wrong. He didn't make any players any better. He didn't at all sort of do what people wanted him to do, which was be more tactically flexible than Ange Postecoglou. I wouldn't necessarily say he was. And then at the last part is that he didn't really earn any respect or any love from the players. You wouldn't say that, he had the same lore that Ange Postecoglou had with some of these players. A lot of people were really clearly sad to see Ange go, even though he did end up, of course, not finishing strong in the league. But a lot of them did seem to have that attachment to him, whereas Franco wouldn't even say that was the case, to be honest. He kind of failed on every level, really.
I think he was unlucky in a way. When you think about it, okay, we're saying the injury started in January. We started the season with no Kulusevski, no Maddison, and no Solanke, which, when you think about it, they are 3 vital players that could have made a difference if they'd been playing regularly. Like, Solanke's back now, but there's no sign of the other 2 guys coming back. In fact, Kulu probably won't be back till next season if he's back at all, the way this injury is shaping up. So I think he was unlucky with injuries. Like, very few teams could cope with the number of injuries that we had all at one time. It's okay if they're spread out through the season, but one player going out, another one coming back. We just have an example of this. Odegaard now gone again now for the season. And I mean, can we not afford a stretcher for the lad? You make a guy with an ACL walk off the pitch. I mean, when I saw that, I said, holy God, if the budget's gone that tight, they can't even afford a stretcher to wheel the poor guy off.
We've overused the stretcher this season. That was why the stretcher's broken.
If I remember correctly, I was at the Crystal Palace game last season when Kulusevski did his knee in. I think they made him walk off as well.
Yeah, I was there.
They tried to make him play on.
Yeah. I don't know.
He went to play on about 3 times, but just to kind of push back a little bit against your point there, Philip, just like Xavi and Kudus were bought knowing that Kulusevski and Maddison were going to be
True.
missing
Take your point.
significant parts of the season.
But
So I think that
they'd take time to bed in, though. That's the thing. The other guys would have hit the ground running, you know.
In fairness, Kudus did hit the ground running. His performance levels kind of dropped as the season went on. Javi, I do agree, he didn't really hit the ground running. He was a bit inconsistent, but he was bought as a direct replacement for Maddison as soon as Maddison got injured. True. That was when we started looking for Jimenez and the likes of that. So I think he did get some coverage in that regard. And Colin Wani came in for Solanke, and he just decided to play him on the wing. I know his attitude's fairly questionable, but I think he could have given him a go up front if he was struggling to find a solution up there.
Do you know, another thing I think that maybe hasn't been talked about enough, well, it has been mentioned, is I understand that they've changed the medical team at Tottenham maybe 3 times in the last 4 years. Can I suggest they make it 4 times?
4 times, sure.
Because it appears to me, there's got to be, I know injuries happen, but how the injuries are treated and how the rehabilitation is treated must be questioned at Tottenham, because other teams play the same number of matches. They don't have anything like the number of injuries that we've been having. So I'm beginning to wonder, is the medical team all is cracked up to be, or are they employing people that they're not paying top dollar to when they should be paying top dollar?
You could also say what Frank did get wrong too, was there were times when certain players picked up a bit of form, and then for whatever reason, he then would drop them for the next game. Like when we clearly needed some of those guys in those games to potentially get a better result. And then he had to like correct it halfway through the game and then bring them in, with 20, 30 minutes to go. There were times when Odegaard was in good bit of form. He dropped him. I remember, infamously for that Man United game, for whatever reason, Joao Palhinha, who saved his ass really with multiple bicycle kicks, dropped him for 5-6 games straight. He ended up dropping as well, I believe. Wasn't it Matisse Tell at one point when Matisse Tell had a bit of form? Pop Matasar is one of the best case examples. He was dropping him when he was playing really well. Just seemed like Thomas Frank too. Just everyone says, oh, he didn't know what his best 11 was. Well, it was like, yeah, but he really didn't know what his best 11 was. There were times when it was glaringly obvious who his best players were for a period, and then he would just drop them inexplainably. He did so much rotation, so much tweaking that I think that also kind of undid him, to be honest.
I think there's also the fact that I was going to say there, the thought's going on in my head now. Sorry, go on. I'll come back to me.
I'll just take some
brain freeze there for a minute.
No, cut across me at any point if it comes back to him. I'm just going to welcome in some people because people are flying in through the door. Please, everybody, smash the like button for us. We would really appreciate it. Alpesh Patel, we'll get on to that. The idea that maybe it wasn't even Vinay and Johan Lange's decision. I did find that very spicy. Paolo Maratti, good to have you in the house. He's saying, after Frank sacking you, I felt more anger than really relief. Good to see El Dante in the house as well. Hopefully everything's good with you. Iceman, do appreciate you. Wayne Bonner saying the only problem now is Enoch and the board choosing the next interim manager. We'll get on to that, Wayne Bonner. Don't you worry. AK Shek's in the house as well. And then we'll get on to the interim manager conversation in just a second. And Logan, THFC, do really appreciate the support, my friend. Let's see what you've thrown in here. He's almost looks like a screaming, but maybe happy type of screaming with Thomas Frank being gone. Logan, thanks for being here with us. Thanks for supporting the channel. If anyone wants to do what Logan has, we would really appreciate it. And of course, I'll keep trying to get your comments up here on screen. Good to see Eugene in the house. Everything is good with you, Eugene, as well as King Hoddle. Let's get on to what maybe someone brought up earlier. I believe it was Wayne Bonner, and I believe it was someone else about, I think it was Alpesh Patel, Jack, saying, according to Paul O'Keefe, Vinay Venkatesham and Johan Lange wanted to keep Thomas Frank, but were told by the board that he had to go. Why do you think Vinay and Lange were so steadfast in keeping Thomas Frank in charge?
Go on, Jack.
I have absolutely no idea, to be honest. I cannot fathom how they thought he could continue after that Newcastle match. Like, I thought West Ham, I was like, he has to go now. Burnley, he has to go now. And then that again, I don't know what they were watching. I don't know if they were watching at all. And the fact that the Lewis family had to step in, they don't have a clue about running a football club, and they could recognise it themselves. I don't know a single Tottenham fan that wanted to keep him. Even people that were like, I'll just give him to the end of the season. Just, we don't give managers enough time. 5 points above the relegation zone would have been 3 if West Ham had held on against Man United. Like, that's just totally unacceptable. And to pretend that, like, just because we have 13 fit players, that should still be enough for us to be comfortably above the drop zone. And we should have had enough of a buffer before now to do it. So I just don't understand. I think it's probably because Lang is his mate. Apparently they've known each other 20 years. But
Yeah.
we've had this as well. We had this with Ange. Your man Scott Munn knew Ange as well. So like, we need to stop hiring people who are pals of other people at the club, because it's clearly clouding our ability to make decisions, because it's happening far too often. I know Vinay and Levy were pals as well. So like, I don't know if it's jobs for the boys or if it's a serious football club, but like, it's far too many instances of this. And yeah, Vinay, I don't know. I quite liked Vinay when he first came in. I thought he spoke well. I thought the fan engagement improved. But for a man who loved the sound of his own voice at the start, he has gone hiding now.
Yeah.
He's indecisive. Like, I don't see how he can let this happen. And I think just on top of that, the stuff that's come out about Thomas Partey today, how many things he's being accused of. And Vinay was at Arsenal when that happened. I just think he's fallen so far in my estimation as both a person and a competent CEO of a football club. I just don't understand how he's lasted, like how he lasted around football as long as he has, if this is what he has to offer, because this is just, it's totally unacceptable. And for a club of our size, we just shouldn't be in this position, and we should have moved on from Thomas Frank long ago. And if they knew there was a chance of sacking him, they should have done it in January, when we could have made a difference, when we could have brought players in. I believe Frank was turning down players. He was praising them for not panicking and buying players. So he was clearly saying, oh no, I don't want this player, I don't want that player. And then as soon as the window closes, they sack him. So they've listened to his opinion, and then a week after the transfer window's closed, they've sacked him. So like, where's the joined up thinking here? I don't get it at all, to be honest. I think it's so frustrating, so concerned, and I don't trust these guys to make a good interim appointment. If there's any issues with getting Pochettino, God knows who they're going to come out with and bring to the football club in the summer, even if everything does go fine for the next 3 months. Like, I don't know. I can't get it. I don't understand how these people are being allowed to run our football club. And I hope that the two of them are moved on as quickly as possible, and some serious people are put in their position.
I think Vinay should never, ever have been considered for the job, purely because of his Arsenal connections.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can't work for the two clubs. It's just not feasible. I mean, he's this generation's Terry Neal. Terry Neal ruined us in the 70s, and now his agent Vinay is now finishing off the job for him. And as for Lange, well, I mean, not enough said about him, the better. But no, I think going back to the fact those two guys couldn't make up their mind to sack, apparently it was the Lewis family. As you rightly say, I'd know more about running the football team than they do, and they just rightly decide enough is enough. This has got to stop. Things have got to change, and they overruled the two lads and got rid of them. Now, if I was in Vinay and Lang's position, I'd say, hang on, I've been compromised here. I'm morally outraged the fact that somebody overruled my judgment, so here's my resignation. I don't think there'd be too many Spurs fans would be objecting if that ever happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's insane that the Lewis family had to override two people in charge of that. And it also worries me, if Jack is right, that maybe the reason even Frank was hired and the reason that Frank stuck in the job is just because he has that connection, that rapport with another fellow, Danish man and Johan Lange, because usually you're told in life, it's about the people who it's about connections, it's about having that networking. And you're like, well, surely like professional sports where then maybe that, doesn't necessarily come to be the case, because it is just about winning. It's not about helping your mates, get a job in the game or something like that. And if that's the case with Spurs, we really are screwed if that's how some of the people are operating at this club. But Philip, just as a follow-up.
Sorry, Jack.
Ahead, yeah.
Just one quick point. Just on top of that as well, Paratici was at the club at the time, and according to some credible reporting, like, he did not want Thomas Frank. Like, he was supposed to be. Everyone knew he was. Yeah, but that's why he apparently that was a big part of why he left, is he felt essentially undermined. The same way you're saying the two lads have now been undermined. So, like, I don't know who's making these decisions. If the sporting director didn't want the manager we got, the sporting director wanted him sacked, and now the two lads that are left after that sporting director is gone have also been overruled. So, like, did the three of them put a name into a hat, and then Viv Lewis comes in and picks whatever name at random? Like, is that how this works? Because clearly at one point someone else is making a decision to a different point. I find it bizarre now. Not that Paratici apparently wanted Igor Tudor, which would have been equally as disastrous. So I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we should have gone with whoever he wanted, but he could recognize what was happening, and I think any footballing person could. And at the end of the day, as much as he has his shortcomings, he is a footballing man. Now, perhaps a bit of a cowboy and a man of yesteryear, where you kind of make deals on connections, but he could recognize what was happening, and they wouldn't listen to him. So I think, as much as I did have issues with him, he was clearly the best of a fairly bad bunch at that sort of higher up level of the club.
I think you're also pointing out the fact that even Spurs fans, and it's not like we know, much about how to run the football club, but even from the get-go, we were like, two directors of football? Like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially two guys that maybe do have very different ways of operating. Parachichi, who's more of a deal maker, good at bringing in high-profile players. Johan Lange, more specialized in kind of the data department, but maybe not as good at actually negotiating deals. We were trying to rationalize it at the time, but if they get in each other's way, then it really does show that, this is not the right way to go about things. And if that's the case, that Parachichi wanted him gone, but then Johan Lange was vouching for him to stay, like, what sort of red tape are we dealing with here at the club where, guys are just getting in each other's way over making crucial decisions at the football club? It just doesn't make any sense. And it's also a very good point that you made earlier, Jack, that Vinay, for a guy that loves to hear his voice so much, he's gone awfully quiet during the very crucial last months or so when we've been needing that bit of transparency that he loved to praise the club for and himself for so much earlier. Philip, I want to ask you about the fact that Vinay and Johan Lange supposedly, if you remember in the beginning of the season, they went through a list of 30 candidates and Frank turned out to be the favorite one. Does that worry you, if these guys are still here, that they will be making the right decision over to who to bring in next if Thomas Frank was apparently their favorite decision?
It doesn't fill me with confidence now, to be honest with you. Unless they realize that, okay, they got away. Frank was a mistake. We acknowledge that. They know this time if they get it wrong, there will be no comeback. They will be gone. I think the Lewis family will not put up with another misplaced managerial appointment. So I think that they will be thinking long and hard about who they actually go for. And like I'm hearing De Serbi's name is highly recommended here. There's fours and against on him. One thing I like about De Serbi is the guy will not take any shit from anybody.
Yeah.
He will absolutely, he's no man's, he won't lie down and play like a playful dog. He will speak out. Worry there is they do something he doesn't agree with, he walks. Like he's done it. Yeah. He's done that with Marseille. He probably did it when he was Brighton when he was there. So but I think we need someone strong, someone that's going to whip these players into place that the players will respect, whether it's De Serbi or what. Because let's face it, we've had 5 full-time managers since Poch left, and maybe 2 or 3 interim managers. That's in 6 years. I mean, we're a managerial graveyard. Who would want to risk their reputation by coming to Tottenham, knowing full well they could be the next one to bite the bullet?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with J-Mac, where the other 29 managers just non-league managers. And Jack, when it came to the decision-making,
Yeah.
I mean,
FIFA managers.
Do you feel like Johan Lange has to also go this summer, Jack? And should we also be looking at potentially putting Vinay on the chopping block, even though he's only just come through the door? Does Johan Lange need to go this summer?
Yeah, they both need to go, no doubt. Like, I think just indecisiveness of the two of them I just cannot believe it, to be honest. And like Lange, I think I have a degree of sympathy for Lange. I think he's probably a good data analyst and scout, and he has a good eye for talent. And he's been promoted because of that. He's been promoted to a position which he's just incapable of doing. He doesn't have the personality for it as other sporting directors has. I know we've talked a few weeks ago about his lack of charisma and just he can't get big deals done. And sometimes it's like you're better off being in that sort of reserve role where he's like, oh, I really like the look of this player, I really like the look of that player. And he brings it to a sporting director and they make the decision then. So I think that's probably the extent of his capabilities. I'm not saying he's completely useless, but in that role, he's just not up to the level we need him to be. And I think just the personal connection with Frank is clearly clouded his judgment, because I think it would have naturally, I think it was probably easier to side with Ange if they were going to keep a manager, either Frank now or Ange in the summer. I think keeping Ange was the much more kind of you would have gotten away with that to a greater extent. Whereas this was like there was no choice but to sack him, and he still wouldn't do it. So I think there's definitely some sort of personal connection there that's clouded his judgment. And then Vinay, I just think like he's clearly not up to the job. And I think as much as we've criticised the Lewis family in recent weeks for kind of failing to live up to their promises, they've shown they are serious about they don't want to clown around, and they've recognised that these guys aren't doing their job, and they've made a decision for them. I don't think they should be running the football club on a day-to-day basis, but they've clearly recognised how bad this situation is.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, Levy inserted Vinay, Lange, Paratici, who were the three sort of architects of this sort of mess on top of Thomas Frank, and Levy was there when Frank was appointed. So ultimately, I think from a fan point of view, I think the Lewis family maybe deserve a chance to fix the mess that maybe Daniel Levy created, and then I think they made a mistake binning him off the way they did. They should have had some sort of handover period if that was possible. But at the end of the day, this is Daniel Levy's mess that's been left, and I think if they can swiftly move on from Vinay and Lange in the summer, get competent football people in, I'm not sure who would come into that sort of Vinay role. I know Paul Barber at Brighton is a whiz at his job, and he's essentially in the same job as Vinay, where he just oversees stuff but isn't really like a proper footballing man, and then let him insert a director of football, or even two directors of football if they want to go with that model. I don't really care, just as long as it works, basically, and just get the club run well again. And like I think they've shown they're clearly willing to spend a bit more money than they did when Daniel Levy was at the helm. So I think it's something that if they can get competent people in there, we can get out of this mess fairly swiftly and get back to where we all think we should be. So I think it is one of those, if they move on, just let them put new people in, give those new people a chance, and then we can really start to judge them, because it's ultimately a fresh slate then with none of the remnants of Daniel Levy's hirings left in that sort of higher up part of the football club. So that'd be kind of what I'd do. But ultimately, they've got some big decisions to make, and this amount of change isn't really ideal. Like, you want to do this more as a gradual thing, but
yeah,
desperate times call for desperate measures. And another season like the last two, and we're in big trouble. I think we'll stay up this year, but as West Ham have shown, as sort of Newcastle, Leeds and the likes have shown, things can unravel very, very quickly if you don't address them. So I think this is something that if we can survive this season and put it right in the summer, we should be okay. But they have to act decisively, as they have done, in fairness, this week by sacking Thomas Frank.
You also can kind of, if you're in their position, they should not be making these decisions over the manager being sacked. If they have to overrule the people they put in charge who are supposed to be making these day-to-day decisions and are supposed to be making these drastic decisions over the football club, that should tell you already that you don't have the right people in charge below you. Their job, their remit is to provide the money, the funds for transfers, probably to, bring in guys like Vinay who are supposed to be doing the day-to-day of the football club. But if they feel like they have to make decisions over a manager being in charge and they have to overrule the guys that they are employing, that should already tell them that Vinay cannot be here any longer, that Johan Lange cannot be here any longer. They should not be having to overrule somebody.
Yeah. In fairness, they gave them plenty of time to make a decision, so I can't really hold that against it. I can't hold that against the owners. They gave Vinay and Lange a month. If you're talking about the West Ham game, that West Ham game was a month ago. They gave them a month to make a decision, and ultimately they looked at it and went, we cannot sit on our laurels anymore. This decision has to be made, or it's going to be too late when we make it. So I think ultimately they tried to avoid getting involved, but they saw that there was no choice at the end. And at the end of the day, it's easy for Lange and Vinay. If we get relegated, they'll go off, they'll have their nice big mansion. But at the end of the day, the Lewis family are the ones that lose their £3 billion asset. So it's their money. They had to make a decision. So that's just the way it is, I think, really.
I think it was only the two wins in the Champions League against Dortmund and Leipzig that extended the agony here. I think if we'd lost either of those matches, we would have been having this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I think that should have give a false dawn. If we can do it in the Champions League, why can't we do it in the Premiership, But we soon came back to reality on that one.
Yeah. He shouldn't have been given those games, though. They knew they wanted to sack him after the West Ham game, and they should have just done it. The Dortmund game is just an excuse to keep him on longer. And look at the mess we're in now. We could have gotten a couple of wins under our belt potentially. That Newcastle team and that Man City team were there for the taking if we had a new manager bounce there.
Yeah,
and like that would have just made such a big difference if we had gotten even if we had gotten the point against Man City and a point against Newcastle. It's just at least we're not losing at home constantly.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I never wanted Manchester United to score a goal more than on Tuesday night there.
It's a terrible
mindset. When it comes
to
that, really, when you're depending on other teams to do you a favor.
Well, I mean,
really
when you're watching,
not be there,
when you're watching West Ham games, it's a bad sign. That's the situation we find ourselves in. I agree with you though, Jack, that it's not like I can really. Yeah, of course, there are plenty of issues with maybe the Lewis family, but it's not really their fault that they've had to all of a sudden just come in here and make this decision. Like, that's the whole point of Vinay's job, Johan Lange's job, is to be making these difficult decisions over a manager. And they clearly took far too long. They were making the wrong decision. And it just seemed like the Lewis family, probably even for financial reasons too. They saw the empty stadium. They're saying that there's no love from the fans at the moment for the manager. They just looked at it and they're like, isn't it obvious, lads? Like, we need to get rid of this guy, right now in order to save our season, but also maybe even just to save the actual revenue that we're supposed to be making from the football club. So I agree with you that it's not like they should be the ones making that decision back in December, January. That's what they employed Vinay and Johan Lange to be doing in the first place. So.
I think also...
Sorry, Jack. Sorry, I was just going to say, do you think they regret the way Levy left? Because Levy would have been more decisive. He would have been gone before Christmas under Levy.
100%.
I'm interested to know if they regret how swiftly they got rid of him and didn't maybe try and do it maybe more of a 12-month notice period where he kind of, like, everything at the football club went through Daniel Levy, and they got rid of him essentially in a afternoon meeting on a random, Monday or Tuesday in September. Like, if they had a 12-month handover, Daniel Levy could have made sure all responsibilities were passed over to the people, and then they say, listen, we'll give you maybe an extra 10% on the value of your shares because we see this as a good investment for the future of the football club. You doing a proper handover of your role, basically, because everything went through Daniel Levy, and then he was just gone, and no one probably had a clue how to do his job.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot of disquiet amongst the fans there. I believe in the Newcastle game, there's some people who couldn't go to the game, tried to sell their tickets on the exchange, but they were told that they couldn't sell it until the other tickets were sold out. Now, they put the attendance on Tuesday night down as 59,000. It's more like 49,000. I think we're adopting the Arsenal trick there. Remember, Arsenal used to do that whenever the ground was half empty. You see 60,000 is the capacity. We seem to be doing the same thing, but the fans, not able to go to the match, should be able to get their money back and sell the tickets on, but the club blocked them from doing it. Little things like that, they get up people's noses on a day-to-day basis, do not help the situation at all.
Yeah, it's just insane that it's been an overruling by them. I just think that's a really bad sign for what's to come, really. But let's talk about this part. Philip, reports are that De Zerbi is not interested in taking a job right now, and Robbie Keane apparently doesn't want to leave Ferencváros over in Hungary just for an interim role to save Spurs. Should Spurs now just look to bring in an interim manager to save our bacon, or should they still consider bringing in a permanent appointment right now?
Well, if De Zerbi says he doesn't want it, then just forget about him. Don't even chase him. Let him go. I mean, I'm probably going to make myself unpopular with some people and popular with others on this one. I'm a Poch in guy. I think Poch to come back in the summer, but it's what we do in the meantime is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, we need at least another 12 or 13 points to just make sure that we're going to be there next season. And who gets us that? I mean, that is the question. If De Zerbi decided he wanted to come, I would say take him now. But if he doesn't, let's go. I can't think of anybody else, really. Like I said earlier, we're a bit of a graveyard for managers, and a lot of managers would not be willing to come to the club to work under those two gentlemen we've been talking about, and to go with the history that's happened to the likes of Pochettino and Conte. Let's face it, two of the most respected managers in world football weren't able to cut it at Tottenham, and there are guys that will be thinking that before they'll make a decision. The guy from Bournemouth is a possibility, but then again, are we taking the same chance we took with Thomas Frank? He's good at a team like Bournemouth. How will he transcend up to a team like Tottenham? So I honestly don't know. But all I want them to do is do not please bring back Tim Sherwood, as I've heard mentioned. I think that would be too much for most of us to bear. He's not even a good pundit. Never mind him, a good manager.
Did have one of the better winning percentages of any Spurs interim manager.
Yeah, well, that's because he's only there for about 10 matches,
Yeah.
Be too hard to do. Robbie Keane, I can see coming back in the future at some stage. But why would he leave Ferencváros, the top of the Hungarian league, and they're still in the Europe Champions League?
Yeah.
Well, come back for an audition for the job. That's basically what he'd be doing.
Is there a chance you think we could lure in someone like Enzo Maresca after he's just left Chelsea?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind him now.
He won't come. He wants that Man City job, I'd say.
Yeah. So
that was why the Chelsea breakdown happened, because he was in talks with Man City. So I think that's do you want a relegation dogfight with Tottenham, or do you want to manage Man City if Pep leaves? I think that's a fairly easy decision.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, can you really think of anybody? Xavi Alonso? Would he want to come? There's not that many that I can think of. Though, we might think we are a big club, right? We don't act like a big club, but we're a big club. But do we have the clout to lure a good quality manager who can bring us on to the level we want to be at? I have my doubts, unless you go back to Pochettino.
I think no manager that would come in on a permanent basis right now. It's difficult because if you're going to come in for the permanent job, you want to get your ideas across. You want to establish the way you want to play, your style of play, your philosophy. Can't really do that when you're immediately coming into the dumpster fire that we're in, where it's kind of just about winning games and getting points. We couldn't really care what the philosophy or style of play is. Right now, I don't really care if you're playing nice football or something like that, like Ange would provide or any other manager. Like, it's just about surviving at this stage. So whatever manager comes in, that's going to be the whole expectation. It's not going to be about employing some style of play or anything like that. So the Xabi Alonsos and people like that of the world probably would find that pretty unattractive, because you're coming into a injury-riddled squad, a squad with no confidence whatsoever, and you just got to start winning games straight away, regardless of play style or anything like that. You're not being given a lot of time, and if you don't get it right, you find yourself in the championship, and probably many of these managers wouldn't really want to be managing a championship club. So it seems like we're pretty much only left, it feels like, with interim managers. Jack, do you have any suggestions of an interim?
I'll agree with Philip anyway. To keep Tim Sherwood away from Tottenham at the moment. His punditry is absolutely brutal. You'd swear you'd never watched a football match in his life. But yeah, I think it'll be Heitinger and Mason, and I think even getting a combination of the two of them, put Mason maybe in charge with Heitinger assistant. It's not ideal, but we just need to get 3, 4, 5 wins and get to the end of the season and just regroup then in the summer. And there's also the point of whoever would get the interim, assuming they can keep us in the Premier League, which I think most managers probably would, with the exception of someone like Sherwood or Harry Redknapp, as I've seen quoted, although I don't know how they'd pay him without a bank account. But yeah, I think they are probably going to have to take some of the preseason as well, because Pochettino, if that's who we are going to get, is going to be at the World Cup when preseason starting. So any of our lads that aren't at the World Cup still, because I'm sure we've all seen plenty of cases where the home team at the World Cup has gotten favourable decisions from referees. You know yourself that they can get to the quarterfinal or the semi-final. I think Russia got to the quarterfinal of the World Cup when it was there. South Korea famously got to the semi-final, essentially being handed games by referees. I think it was against Italy in 2002. Italy had 2 or 3 clear penalties turned down by referees. So I think perhaps America could go quite far in it. And then you're looking at maybe Pochettino coming in early to mid-July, and pre-season's already started. You're probably getting ready to jet off on whatever pre-season tour you're going on, and your manager hasn't even had a chance to assess the squad. Never mind say, oh, we need players in this position, this position, this position. And as we've discussed plenty of times before, there's no joined-up thinking at this club. So if for whatever reason we didn't get Pochettino, what's to say that we're going to get a manager that's similar to him in style or personality or whatever? We could go the complete opposite direction. And then those targets we've drawn up that we think Pochettino might like, suddenly another manager comes in and they say, oh, well, I want these targets, essentially. I want these types of players. So I think we've that to think about as well with once we appoint an interim manager, they're probably going to have to take some of the pre-season training as well. Now, some of that will just be fitness, but it's far from ideal preparations at the same time. So someone that could maybe implement some of his ideas in pre-season as well would be quite important.
Thing about Pochettino coming back, though, if he does come back, he knows the club. It's like Ryan Mason coming in as interim. He'll hit the ground running because he knows the club. Poch has been away for 5 or 6 years. He knows the club. So if there's ever sorry.
No.
I'll give you a ring back, Sean, all right? Thanks, Ben. If Pochettino does come in, you can be sure there'll be some kind of pre-nuptial agreement, if you want to call it. So you're coming from with the US authorities. It'll not be disclosed because that would undermine the American preparation for the cup and everything. But I think he'll be pulling the strings in the background, and I wouldn't be too worried about him coming in late. As I said, it's not as if it's the first time he's ever been at the club. He knows what to do. But whether that's what the present hiring and firing guys will go for, I do not know. I mean, this is it. If the likes of say just argument's sake, say Xavi Alonso comes along to them and says, "Lads, I'm available. I can start next week." That's Pochettino gone out the door for 2.5 years. So this appointment is just so important. Somebody's mentioned there Jurgen Klinsmann. I think he's probably been out of the game a bit long now to be considered for it. He'd be a great man for the first couple of matches, but then when we started losing again, then things would go back to normal.
Yeah, it seems like everybody pretty much just wants Poch, at least for the most part. I think a large percentage, but I think at this stage we should be just looking to bring in someone that can just get us, as people are saying in the chat, around 4 wins or so. What it looks like in order to get us, out of this tricky situation. So I think we should just be looking to bring in an interim manager that can be a bit of a fire brigade for the situation at the moment. But I don't know if we really have any, permanent managers that would be willing to come and try to fix this dumpster fire. That's maybe why the interim managers sometimes are kind of specialists in getting people out of these emergency type situations. We are going to move on, though, to Ange's interview with the Overlap. So as people are in here, we have close to over 200 people on all platforms watching us. If you're over on Twitter, feel free to follow us over. And if you're on YouTube, I would appreciate it if you guys did smash a like. Just sends this stream out to more and more Spurs fans that needed therapy, but also this trying to figure out this basket case of a situation that we are in. Ange, throughout his interview on the Overlap, Jack, was curious what have Spurs been trying to build at this football club. He mentioned that they brought in Jose and Conte to win trophies immediately, but then they sacked them because of the style of play not being good enough, even though they were brought in to win trophies. Then they bring in Ange in order to change to a better style of play, but after he won us a trophy, they still sacked him. They then moved to Thomas Frank, who had a very different style of play to Ange, but also had never won anything in his career. Is he right to be confused and to be questioning what actually Spurs want from their managers?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much what we've all been talking about for quite a long time. But it's one thing I was amazed by was a couple of my friends texted me who support, the couple of them support Liverpool, and they were like, "Oh yeah," I was shocked by like some of the quotes coming out of him. That's like massive what he's saying. I was like, I kind of thought it was a bit like stating the obvious because I was expecting it to be this big explosive thing. Whereas I guess for fans of the club or people that aren't fans of the club, they're like, Jesus, didn't realize how bad it was until someone says it. But that's what we've all been saying for a very long time, that like there's no joined up thinking whatsoever. And I think I'd imagine Ange wasn't overly impressed with how we were set up behind the scenes anyway, judging from what he said. Now, he was obviously limited on what he can say because I'm sure he sees himself back working at the top level now, and the sort of fella he is, whether he's right or not is another thing. So he doesn't want to totally assassinate the ownership at Tottenham and say they're a disgrace and they're this and they're that, because another club's going to go, oh, but we're not going to take Ange because if things go badly for him, he's just going to go after us. So I think he stated a lot of stuff we knew, but it was at the same time, it's nice to hear someone come out and say it on maybe a public platform and not maybe be someone like Mourinho or Conte where it's like, this is self-preservation. I thought he kind of was just fairly brutally honest. I know some people will say he was protecting his own reputation, but I just think he kind of stated the truth and said that, like, at the end of the day, we signed 3 teenagers in the summer. That was a fact. Everyone knew we were after the likes of Pedro Neto. We didn't end up going for him. We went for Audebert, who I really liked as a player, but clearly wasn't ready to play at that sort of like top Champions League level or close the gap to the likes of Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal. So I think everything he said was pretty spot on. I thoroughly enjoy listening to Ange anytime he talks. I'm just happy we don't have to watch his football from last season anymore, because it was fairly tough to watch at times. But I'll definitely tune in next week again for when he's back on. Hopefully we get some more good quotes from him. Maybe goes a bit more into depth, because I thought it was perhaps a bit short. I think it was only about 20 minutes. If we can get an hour of him talking about stuff, that'd be very interesting, I think.
Ribsy saying, look, guys, it's simple. They want you to win, but not like that. Be charismatic, but not outshine the club, and win trophies, but never at the expense of anything else. If you could also magically heal from injuries, that would help as well.
I wonder if that thing that Sky put out yesterday wasn't meant to go out, but the data that was in it, they decided to rush it out quickly because it was topical. Was it actually scheduled for broadcast?
Yeah, they weren't. It was meant to be next week. They were doing a back-to-back thing. They record 2 in one sitting, and Ange was meant to be on for the one next week, but they couldn't. They called him into the room early to join this week's chat. So it actually they said themselves that they changed it. It's a shame it wasn't recorded today though, because they would have got him to react to Sean Dyche's sacking as well. It probably was the best day of Ange's life. His 2 former clubs both sacked his replacements.
But I haven't been able to seeing all the interview, but like my initial reaction when hang on, here's another manager washing his dirty linen in public, which isn't really the case here. But I just feel that he's probably right in what he's saying, because I mean he's saying what we all know, right? But he's also educating the greater soccer following public who might not be aware or might not care what's going on at Tottenham Hotspur. Now he's made that more aware. He's probably making it more difficult for a manager to come into the club, because geez, I'm not taking that lot on. So there could be a double-edged sword here. He's telling people what we need to know, but he's also warning any new manager that this is not going to be an easy ride for you if you take the job. That being said, I mean, I think we love Ange as a person. I mean, he's a character. He's charismatic and all that, but as you say, he couldn't stick his football anymore. I mean, we'd probably be already relegated if he was there this season with everything that's been going on, But I'd be interested to see the full take of that interview next week. Because let's face it, the likes of Gary Neville, they're no fans of Tottenham. I'm sure they were digging to get as much dirt as they could from Ange. And it just depends how he tempered his replies, whether he's actually gone too far, and hopefully he doesn't leave himself open to a lawsuit from Tottenham.
Yeah, well, in Gary Neville's case, he did that, of course, that interview with Harry Kane, did the one with Daniel Levy. Doesn't ever seem to ask the difficult questions about Tottenham, and it's almost like they roll their eyes when they even have to talk about us, to be honest, from what I can tell. I do feel like Ange, had a lot of the quotes that he has said a lot of things that a lot of us as Spurs fans would find hard to disagree with, and he doesn't necessarily hold back too much, Ange Postecoglou, when he talks, which maybe helped the situation with us maybe feeling like we're not crazy with what's been going on, because I did agree with that, and I think a lot of people have said that they abandoned the whole play style of Pochettino and they were building something there, but then it seemed like Daniel Levy just grew tired, wanted to win trophies immediately, brought in Jose and Conte, but never really gave them an incredible squad to work with. Like, he still just said win trophies with Eric Dyer, Sanchez, and Ben Davis as your backline, and maybe you'll get a Clement Longley 2 or 3 years into the job. And Joe Rodon as well, right? Guys like that and Matt Doherty's and Serge Aurier's. He expected those guys to be winning trophies with them. But then they also, to their credit, were having us finish in 4th place in Conte's case. Jose had us challenging for a trophy in the League Cup and had us still in a Europa League spot, Conference League spot at the end of the day. And you just feel like, what was the expectation there if they're not going to give them the resources to win trophies, but then they're also disappointed that we're still finishing in Europe? What is it that they do want from their manager? Because then they bring in Ange Postecoglou, and then in Ange Postecoglou's case, didn't really use a lot of the young players, because he seems like he wasn't a guy that really liked using young players, but he did bring the style of play, did win us a trophy at the end of the day, but then they sacked him because they felt like they could still do better. But then the next manager move they make is for Thomas Frank, a guy who doesn't really have an attractive style of play, but also hasn't even won anything in comparison to the previous managers that we had at the club. So it really has just been this whole time. What do they actually expect from their manager? What is it that they want? Do you think, Philip, that they want attractive football at all costs, or do you think it is just about winning trophies at Spurs?
I honestly don't know. I mean, we got to the League Cup final in 2021, wasn't it? And sacked Jose the Tuesday before the final. I mean, that has still not been properly explained to me by anybody why that actually happened. I presume it was the style of football that did it. But I mean, you don't put an interim manager in charge 6 days before a cup final. I mean, that was just crazy. I don't know. I really don't know what they want. I mean, I think what we would like, okay, we know we're not going to win the league unless they completely bust the salary cap and do everything and do a Manchester City on it. We're not going to win the league. I think we got very comfortable with Pochettino. We were second, fourth. You know, we were challenging. We got to the Champions League final. He wasn't backed. That was the crux of that. He wasn't back for 516 days. I think around that. There was transfer windows went by and we bought nobody. We didn't back the players. It's as if we wanted success, but weren't prepared to spend the money to obtain it. And I think that's probably, maybe, hopefully gone out the window with the Lewis's putting this supposedly war chest of money available to buy players. Not that they use much of it in January. Maybe it's planned to use it in July or whenever. But I honestly don't know what we want. I mean, all I want at the minute is to be in the Premiership next season. Because the only way we're going to qualify for Europe is by winning the Champions League. And if that happens, that would probably be the greatest achievement in the history of football, bar nothing. It's not going to happen, obviously. But like we're now looking, we've gone from a Champions League final in 2019, a Europa Cup win in 2025, and here we are worrying we'll even be in the Premiership next season.
J-Mac saying it's been a scattergun approach all along by the board at best. It's maybe what they want is just Champions League money this whole time. Would you agree with that, Jack? It's maybe not even about style of play. It's probably actually just about having as much revenue as possible, either through trophies or by consistently delivering European football, because that might have been part of the reason why they sacked Ange, because it was just unacceptable not to be finishing in a European place, maybe in their eyes.
Yeah, I think that what they want is just sustained, not success, but sustained being up there in the top sort of 6 positions. And you say, if you finish in the top 6 positions every single season, the odds are about half of the time or better, you're probably going to be in the Champions League, because there's five spots for that now. So if you can just stay in and around there, more often than not, you'll qualify for the Champions League. But at the end of the day, all we want as fans is just a team to be proud of, and a team that can make you dream of having those big days, even if it only comes along every 4 or 5 years, where you get that big day out in Wembley, or the week in Bilbao, or whatever, or the nights where you beat Real Madrid 3-1 in the Champions League and you're flying high in the Premier League. Like, that's ultimately the Pochettino era. We won nothing in it, but that is what everyone wanted. I never heard anyone really moaning, saying we haven't won anything. It's like we would have loved to have done it, but at the end of the day, everyone was happy with where we were going for the vast majority of that period. And I think that kind of reflects the feeling of the club, that was probably their dream scenario, that they didn't have to spend the sort of money that it takes to win the Premier League. Because, as you said, that's Man City level spending, that's Chelsea level spending, the money Man United have spent trying to get back to that level now. That's ultimately where the risk is. There's a point where the marginal gains from spending money starts to really erode, and you're spending a lot more than it's worth. But you still have to spend a certain amount to get up to that top 4. And if you can maintain that top 4 level, maybe with 70, 80 million net spend a summer, maybe the 6th or 7th highest wage bill in the Premier League, that's probably the dream scenario for the owners. But from our point of view, we just want to be at the right end of the table, playing decent football and having a team and a manager that we're proud of and we connect with. None of us want to be booing players off at halftime every second game at home, or players fighting with fans in the away. And we want to clap them off and say, listen, we might not be the best team in the country, but we're still proud of you as a team. You might break our hearts sometimes, but we're still always here for you. Not this all-out war between the owners, the manager, the players, the fans. Everyone's just fighting the whole time. We just want to feel unity. Even if we're going to fall short, we just want something that we're all in it together rather than nearly just fighting each other the whole time.
I want to go back to the time 2019, May 2019, the night in Amsterdam. Probably
that was
one of the greatest nights of my Tottenham career. I mean, to come from back 2-0 down that match, that was the thing dreams are made of. And then Bilbao last May. We all thought that was one of the best nights as well. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to keep up the momentum, if you like. And we're now dreaming against hope that we get a good run in the Champions League to get maybe a few more nights like that, which might, bring us back, reconnect us with the team. Because the minute we are so disconnected with that team, I hate to see players getting booed, but it's a natural reaction. When they are not performing to a standard that we expect and pay for, then, that booing is a natural reaction. And I hope the booing has now stopped for the season. From now on, whoever takes that place on the dugout has the support of all the fans from now until the end of the season, because we need every positivity that's going now. We can't afford that players going into their shell because they're getting booed off at half time.
He also had this to say about the expenditure, and this was kind of having to do with the title of the stream, saying that Spurs are not a big club in the way that they act. He was saying when you look at their expenditure, particularly the wage structure, he says you can't see Spurs acting like a big club. And said after finishing 5th, we needed to sign Premier League ready players in order to compete with the very best teams to finish in the Champions League spots. He said he was looking at Pedro Neto, Brian Mbeumo, Antoine Semenyo, and Mark Guéhi. What do you make of that, Jack? That was probably, I think, the most damning bit from Ange Postecoglou, because then he said we ended up signing Dominic Solanke and 3 teenagers. Do you kind of feel for Ange in that regard? Do you think he's right by saying that was the only way to be able to finish in those Champions League spots and compete with the best was to sign those types of players to increase the wage expenditure?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very fair point from Ange's point of view. Now, I think sometimes fans get too caught up on this sort of Prem proven, Prem ready sort of thing. Adding sort of 2 to 4 players in the summer transfer window, that's sort of the sweet spot where you're not maybe taking too much risk with just trying to change your entire team in one go, but also constantly improving and perhaps moving fellas on that are on the decline or maybe you haven't lived up to expectations. But I think you saw the improvements that Dominic Solanke made to Ange's team in the way that we were able to play in some of those games at the start of his second season. I think he had us in 5th place when we beat Man City 4-0. I was there that day. That was an unbelievable performance by the team. And Solanke was absolutely brilliant on that day. And I thought nearly every game he played from the start of the season until things got really bad for us, I thought he was absolutely outstanding. And you could see why Ange really wanted him, because he had that sort of technical quality blended with physicality, and he'd run himself into the ground. And maybe if he did have someone like Mbeumo, I'm not the biggest fan of Neto. I really like Mbeumo and Semenyo though. And if he had someone like them, or even Mohamed Kudus, or if he'd gotten Xavi or something, it could have just maybe been times when James Maddison was out injured or needed a rest or whatever, he could have come into the team. So I just think, he got let down on that. I think if he got 3 players the quality of Dominic Solanke, I think you're probably looking at us finishing comfortably mid-table and still winning the Europa League. But ultimately, it was his job to make do with what he had. Things don't always work out perfectly as a manager, and coming 17th because you had one bad transfer window isn't really a valid excuse at the same time. So as much as I love Ange, I think that possibly was one of the few bits of self-preservation he did where he kind of used as an excuse for finishing 17th in the Premier League. Perhaps it would have been the difference between finishing 7th and finishing 4th, but I don't think the difference between I don't think we would have finished in the top 4 just because he was given Mark Guéhi and Brian Mbeumo in that summer transfer window. I still think we probably would have had quite an underwhelming season. He probably would have ended up still losing his job regardless.
I'm just wondering, I know we tried to get Semenyo this season under the new wage regime, if you like. That time under Ange, the wage cap was very much in force. I'm just wondering if the players were willing to come, but not willing to come at the money they were being offered at that stage.
Yeah,
and that might have been the reason we didn't get them, and which again, that was a penny pinching that has to finish. That has to stop. I mean,
so you're saying, would you agree
has
with
to stop.
Eugene here, Philip, that they would have come at that time after we had finished fifth if we gave them the wages they
gave them
wanted?
the right money, yeah, but we're probably offering them maybe 2/3 of what they were getting anywhere else. So that's why they didn't come. I'd say that's why we've lost out on so many players over the years.
Yeah.
A lot of them will be willing to come, but not at the money they're being offered. So I think that may hopefully is in the past now. That the wages on offer now will be better or on a par with the likes of Man City and United and Arsenal. Problem there is you then run the risk of making the players that came in under the lower wage cap getting jealous. Like the Mickey Van de Ven, unless you can tie him down to a new contract on the big money, those guys might say, well, how come he's not better than me? How come he's getting twice the money I'm getting? That can cause problems in the squad as well,
Yeah. I'd like to think that we probably would have been able to sign either an Mbumo, a Neto, or a Semenyo in that period. Especially, I don't think Semenyo was at the stage that he is now. I think it was impossible to have signed him this last January. I think he already was ready-made for a top team like Man City. But it did feel like that season, he was still kind of a little bit under the radar, I felt like. He wasn't necessarily in everybody's sort of top-level winger kind of team sheet or anything like that. I think Neto and maybe Brian Mbumo might have had better stock at the time, even though I think Semenyo was probably always as good as them, but he was only just coming off of maybe one good season at the time, kind of like Dominic Solanke. So that was a good chance to sign someone of that type of caliber, but probably was just down to the fact that it would have taken a lot of money to get him out of Bournemouth, and then they would have had to offer a lot of wages as well. And Spurs seem to only be willing to do one or the other. They'll give a guy wages as long as they can maybe sign him on like a free or something like that, or they can sign him for really low money. And then if they have to offer a huge transfer fee, then they're not going to offer huge wages because they've already spent so much on that. Seems like they just won't do essentially both. Paulo Dybala maybe being a good case example from back in the day. They weren't willing to sign the naming rights for the guy in the sponsorship. Last and certainly not least, but this is going to be the last question of the evening, folks. Jack, Ange Postecoglou mentioned, everywhere you walk around the Tottenham stadium and its training facilities, you see the club motto, "To dare is to do," but they tend to do the opposite of that. That also, I felt like for me, might have been one of the most damning quotes that he maybe brought up in the interview. Was there anything else that maybe he touched on that I might have missed? But I kind of found that to be the excellent parting words when it came to Spurs.
Yeah, I thought that was fairly striking, to be honest. I think he was he spoke about how he pointed out to players that Harry Kane's not up on that wall, Sonny's not up on that wall, Sonny got himself up on that wall, and he was like, a lot of these pictures are in black and white. We want to add some ones in color. We want to add ourselves, but I think he's not wrong. We don't really follow the club motto. It's more like, I don't know, we're totally rudderless at the moment. Like, to dare is to do is like conviction in everything you do, and ultimately we're the total opposite of that. But just on the point of him talking about the pictures up around the place, I remember Richarlison put on his Instagram a couple of weeks ago that as soon as Brennan Johnson left the club, they ripped down the picture of him that was on the wall celebrating in Bilbao, which is,
wow.
I think that says it all about the club, that like, just because the player left, it's like as if you wipe that out of the history of the club. Like, regardless of what Brennan Johnson does the rest of his life, that image of him knee sliding and falling over in Bilbao, celebrating with the Tottenham away or the Tottenham end, going absolutely mental in front of him. It doesn't matter where he plays. That image is always a part of Tottenham's history, and I think taking that down off the wall just shows how the club view football, essentially. Like that Johnson left, and then it's like that memory never happened.
Yeah, there's probably still images of Eric Dyer or something like around the club, but they took down the one of Brennan Johnson. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Philip, that's what I thought was maybe the most kind of damning quote that Ange brought up, was the fact that it's "to dare is to do" is written everywhere across the facilities and then in stadium. But he said we're pretty much the opposite of that. I know that you said to me in the background, though, that you felt like, managers, former managers doing these types of interviews, you feel like it's always sort of to glaze themselves a little bit and polish their own reputation. So I know you said to me earlier, you're not even the biggest fan of the fact that Ange did this interview.
Not really, no, any manager really. But like, I appreciate his reasons for doing it, and you have to appreciate what he's saying, and agree with most of it. But I think it's just the timing of it was obviously manufactured by the events of yesterday, sacking Frank. But I think today is to do. I mean, for many years over my time supporting Spurs, I've changed it. Today is to don't. Yeah. Because we just don't seem to, push on like our motto said. Like, give me a little example of how petty things can be at Tottenham. Now, this is going way, way back. I don't know. You probably heard of a book called The Glory Game, written by Hunter Davis. It was written in the UEFA Cup winning year of 71-72, right? And the players had a complaint that in the dressing room after the match, the club didn't even supply soap or shampoo. Now, think about it. You look at the luxurious dressing rooms that we have there at the stadium now, right, with all mod cons. And for a match back in the 70s, the players had to bring in their own soap and shampoo because of the cost of it. So, does some things ever change, really?
No, it's maybe that is our ethos. It's just to dare us to save, to dare us to.
Because we were Bill Nicholson used to cover all the players' contracts.
Yeah. And
Pat Jennings went in looking for a pay rise and ended up nearly going out with a pay cut. So it's it's 50 years on, but it's pretty much the same way of doing things, unfortunately, in a lot of ways.
To dare is to excel, but it's the Excel spreadsheet logo, attached next to it.
They're probably more concerned as to where Beyonce can we squeeze another Beyonce gig in,
Yeah. I think maybe the last thing I'll say is just even the fact that I think I'm pretty convinced that they told Thomas Frank to say to the press that we tried to sign Semenyo. I don't think he would have just said that, just to, it's not like he polishes his own reputation. He's almost, if anything, just polishing the Johan Lange Vinay reputation by saying something like that. So it does seem like it is just to dare is to don't, really. And or to dare is to try and fail, it seems like in Spurs' case. But everybody, I think we're going to leave it there unless any of you guys had any final words to bring up.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to say one thing about Ange. If there was ever a man I'd love to go for a pint with, it's Ange Postecoglou. I'd say you could sit there for hours and hours and hours listening to him rattle off stories. And I have to say, I'd insist on paying for every single pint he drank because of that night in Bilbao.
I think it's Dyche for me is the number one, but Ange wouldn't be too far behind in that regard. Philip, any final words? Thanks once again for being on with us. Thanks for being a fantastic super sub.
Yeah, let's just hope that, by the time we were talking again, there's no match this weekend, thank God, really. Give them a chance to get things organised. Then the little Matt Liver North London derby next week. I'm confident we will stay up. I'm confident, with the fingers crossed, that we'll make the right decision as to who to bring in now, be it full-time or temporary. And I think we get over this hump. We've enough young players at that club. We've got great talent coming back. Vuskovic is tearing up trees in Germany. Mikey Moore, the same for Rangers. We've got those young lads, Bergvall and Gray. The future is bright for Tottenham if they're managed correctly by the right person.
Well, everyone, please do thank Jack and Philip for taking time out of their evenings and once again trying to solve the classic case of Tottenham Hotspur mess. We do appreciate you guys. If you guys can for us, smash the like button, please, if you are watching this back. And we will see you tomorrow with whatever Dave and I come up with to try to keep our minds sane during this difficult period, but also as well to keep up to date with anything that might be changing around this managerial hunt. But we'll see you next time, everybody. Have a good rest of your evenings. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.